Hello everybody, my name is RayalWorldConz, and before we dive into today's video, I want to give a heads up to our viewers. This video contains historical images, including some slave art that depict the challenging history of African Americans. We understand that this content may be triggering or emotionally difficult for some viewers. We want to encourage open and respectful dialogue about our shared history, and we aim to educate and raise awareness. Please feel free to skip or pause the video if you find the content uncomfortable. We are committed to approaching this topic with sensitivity and respect. Thank you for your understanding, and let's get started.
What's good, everybody? My name is RayalWorldConz. Welcome to RayalWorldConz, and today we are back with another video of Soulaan history. Today we are going to be talking about the ancient origins of the Soulaan people, which took place before the transatlantic slave trade. Then we will dive deep into events after the transatlantic slave trade and talk about the phenotypical features and the genetic genes of the Soulaan people. Before I start this video off, I would like to clarify what exactly is a Soulaan person. Soulaan is just another term for African Americans, also known as Black Americans. So just remember, whenever I'm talking about Solon, I mean African Americans. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive deep. What we know is that Soulaans, also known as African Americans, descended from various different ethnic tribal groups from Africa. These African tribal ethnic groups that Soulaans descended from mostly take place in Western, Central, and Southern Africa, including the Sahel regions, which stretches from Western to Eastern Africa. But there are a smaller number of African American Soulaans that descended from Eastern Africans and Northern African tribes. Many of these ethnic tribes had multiple different ways of living. Like, for example, you have the nomadic tribes, you have some agricultural tribes, and you had some hunter-gathering tribes. And many of these things, these tribes still do to this day. Now, these are the various ethnic tribes that most African Americans descended from in Western Central Africa. These ethnic tribes include the Fulanis, the Igbo tribe, the Yoruba tribe, the Hausa tribe, the Mandinka tribe, and along with many other tribes stretching from Western Central Africa. You also have some Bantu tribes, which mostly takes place in Southern Africa, the Xhosa tribe, the Kikuyu tribe, the Zulu tribe, the Luba tribe, along with many other tribes. And like I said before, you also have some African Americans that came and descended from Eastern Africans and Northern African tribes. I won't be able to name all the tribes here in this video, but if I pronounce any of those tribal names wrong, please let me know in the comments. Now, due to the war conflict taking place all throughout African regions, it's said that Africans were selling other Africans into slavery, but to be more specific, it was tribes selling other African tribes in their own tribes due to tribalism taking place to gain benefit and profit by participating. Sometimes these tribes got into conflicts and fights with each other. The conflicts happened for many reasons, like wanting more land or power. When these conflicts got worse, some leaders from the tribes saw a chance to gain benefit and profit. They captured people from other tribes and sold them to other areas as slaves, and it caused a lot of suffering to people who were captured. It's important to remember that the people that became slaves were just caught up in the middle of all this. They didn't choose to be in those situations, and they were often forced by leaders who wanted to gain power. While tribal conflicts and power struggles were part of the story, it's also very heavily important to know that a lot of innocent people were affected by this event, which then led to the other event called the transatlantic slave trade. While some Africans were forced on boats by European settlers to become their slaves, it was of course a very traumatic experience. They were forced to sit in a specific area for long periods of time in slave dungeons, mansions, boats, and etc., with no ventilation. While the Africans were being shipped, most Africans didn't make it in time due to either being killed off, human waste death, or suicide. Africans being shipped landed in America, Caribbean islands such as Jamaica, Haiti, Trinidad, and a lot more locations. When Africans were in the Americas, some were taken as slaves by the American native tribes such as the Cherokee Indians, Choctaw Indians, Creek Indians, and other American Indian tribes. This is due to the American federal government allowing them to embrace the institution of chattel slavery, which led to them enslaving and owning humans and their offspring as property to help civilize them. Keep in mind, when African Americans were here in the Americas, they were also doing a lot of agriculture. African Americans also came up with a concept called soul food. It usually contains macaroni and cheese, cornbread, greens, fried chicken, and a lot of that good stuff. And while we were here for about 200 or 300 years, we even came up with many music genres. More information on soul food and Solon music genres in a future video. Now we are going to be covering the Soulaan DNA genes. Soulaans are typically a very mixed people due to all of the slavery happening here in the Americas. Soulaans are also very mixed due to we are in a country with many nations from different countries, ethnic backgrounds, and etc. So a lot of admixture was happening through time, but first we have to understand what exactly is admixture. Admixture, the blending of genetic material from different ancestral backgrounds. In the context of Soulaans, admixture occurred during the transatlantic slave trade when Africans from multiple different tribes mingled here in the Americas, leading to intermarriages and the mixing of genetic traits. And within this process, it formed a new ethnic group known as the African Americans. African Americans are, of course, mainly of African ancestry and are mixed with European and indigenous American ancestry. Now, realistically, some African Americans don't have any European ancestry at all and may just have African and Native American ancestry. Some African Americans may have more European and less African ancestry. But most African Americans are mostly African and some European. And then you'll come across some African Americans that have absolutely no European or indigenous American ancestry at all. Not only are Soulaans typically mixed of those ancestries, but you'll also come across people of Soulaan descent who are also mixed with Asian or Australian or South American. And not only will you be able to find this specifically in African Americans, but you'll also find this in people in the Honduras, Jamaica, Haiti, and a lot of different ethnic groups throughout the African diaspora. Now that we're done with DNA, let's talk haplogroups. What exactly is a haplogroup? Haplogroup. A haplogroup is a genetic population group of people who share a common ancestor on the paternal line or the maternal line. So the Y chromosome, which is the haplogroup for fathers, which is the paternal line, is geared specifically to the males. This specific haplogroup passes from father to son in many generations. Now for the mothers, they don't really have a haplogroup necessarily due to the fact that they don't have a Y chromosome. Instead, they have two X chromosomes while the males have X and Y chromosomes. This is why both males and females inherit their mitochondrial DNA, which stems from their mother. Now that that's out of the way, what is the haplogroup of Soulaans? Now, when it comes to haplogroups, Soulaans predominantly belong to haplogroup E1b1a, also known as EM2. And this haplogroup traces its roots all the way back to Africa, specifically West and Central Africa. Now, haplogroup E1b1a is shared by many other ethnic African tribal groups due to its extensive presence in the African continent. Some of these various African tribes include the Yoruba, the Igbo, and the Akan peoples, and many other ethnic tribes. Now, it's very important to know that haplogroups are markers of ancient ancestry and can be found in multiple populations due to historical interactions and migrations. So while haplogroup E1b1a is common amongst African Americans, it's also present in most African tribes and some African descendant populations, each with their own distinctive cultures and histories. Now that DNA and genetics are out of the way, now we're going to talk about the phenotypical facial structures of the Soulaan people. Due to the DNA genetics of Soulaans, not only are we genetically diverse, but we are also phenotypically diverse. Our skin colors range from dark brown to mid-brown to very, very light brown. Also, just a disclaimer, whenever I mention the human phenotypes on the side, just know that I'm going to use the scientific terms for these phenotypes. Now, one thing about Soulaan people is that we come in many different facial features and shapes and sizes. You'll often come across Soulaans with a bantoid or congolid a type of phenotypical structure due to we came from tribes from Western, Central, and Southern Africa. The Bantoid phenotype is very common amongst Soulan populations, as some Soulans have wide noses, full lips, high foreheads, and kinky hair. Same goes for Congoloid phenotypical structures. Their faces are more broader, fairer skinned, strong body hair, and a nasal more depressed. Due to some Soulans coming from Southern African tribes or being mixed outside of Africa, you'll often come across Soulans with a Khoisan, Sonid, or Asian-like facial structure. This is mostly due to them having folded eyes, ruddy brown skin, or peppercorned hair. You'll also come across Soulans that came from the Sahel region, which stretches from Western and East Africa. This also includes Northern African tribes as well. This is known as the Ethiopid phenotype, which portrays very dark skin with a ruddy tint, tight curly hair, long heads and faces, marked chin, and thick lips. And now finally for the African American Soulan phenotype, which is due to admixture. The Soulan or African American phenotype exhibits a rich spectrum of features. As I said before, our skin colors range from deep ebony to various shades of different colors of brown. Hair textures are very diverse, from tightly curled coils or wavy patterns. Facial features portray full lips, broad noses, and expressive eyes with a distinctive shape. So with all this information being said, what do we know so far? Well, we know that before the transatlantic slave trade, African Americans pretty much descend from multiple ethnic groups in Africa, including people from the African diaspora like Haitians, Jamaicans, people from the Honduras, and people from the Dominican Republic, and so on. We also know that African Americans, including people from the African diaspora, are pretty much mixed. Most are mixed due to the transatlantic slave trade or people just wanting to get into genuine relationships with other people. And not only that, people are mixed in Africa as well. You have some people that look like they're from totally different countries. We also found out that African Americans, including people from the diaspora, have haplogroup E1B1A. Now, it is likely that you will find some African Americans that have different haplogroups like E1A, E1B, or E1B1B, and so on. We also found out that people from, African Americans and, people from the African diaspora have different phenotypical facial features due to the admixture taking place here in the Americas and all over the world. So yeah, with that being said, I hope you guys learned something. The reason why I'm doing these types of videos is because I told you guys in the last video, they're getting rid of African American history. Along with that, people don't really take African American history seriously, so I'm starting to pretty much tell African American history to you guys through my lens. That way it can, people won't forget, right? So yeah, with that being said, more videos like this are going to come out, so just be sure to stay tuned for that. And along with that, if you guys are interested in more videos, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, share with others, and hit that notification bar so you guys can stay tuned for more videos. And with that being said, this is RayalWorldConz. Y'all go ahead and take care. Peace out, y'all.